Imagine sitting in a courtroom, the place where justice is supposed to be served, and the person you promised to love for the rest of your life looks you dead in the eye and calls you a useless husband. Not in a whisper, not in the heat of an argument behind closed doors, but in front of a judge, a room full of strangers, and on the official record. That moment right there wasn't just humiliation. That was the final nail in the coffin of a marriage I had been trying to save for years. My name is Marcus, and what happened in that courtroom didn't just change the outcome of my divorce, it changed the entire trajectory of my life. And trust me, the story of how I went from being labeled a useless husband to standing in that same courtroom with the power to walk away with everything is the kind of story that makes you believe in karma. In fact, it's the very reason I started this channel, Karma After Midnight, because sometimes the universe takes its sweet time, but when it delivers with absolute precision. Let me rewind a few years. When I met Vanessa, I was a different man. I was ambitious, I was working 70 hours a week at a logistics firm, and I was building something. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. She was charming, she was beautiful, and she had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We got married about 18 months after we met, and for the first year, things were good. But then, slowly, the compliments stopped, the support stopped. Instead of asking how my day was, she started asking how much I made. It started with small comments. Why can't you get a promotion like Sarah's husband? Or, my friend's husband just bought her a new car and I'm stuck driving this old thing. I took it as motivation. I thought, okay, she just wants a better life. I worked harder, I took on extra shifts, I started a side hustle doing freight coordination on weekends. I was running on fumes, but I thought I was doing it for us. But the more I gave, the more she took. And the more she took, the more she told me it wasn't enough. Eventually, I started to believe her. I started to believe that I was failing. She isolated me from my friends because she said they were a bad influence. She made me feel guilty for visiting my mom because she said I was choosing my family over her. By year 3, I was a shell of myself. I was working 2 jobs, coming home to a spotless house that she demanded I help clean. And if I sat down for 5 minutes to breathe, I'd hear, "Must be nice to relax while I do everything." I was exhausted, but I loved her. Or at least, I loved the idea of the life we were supposed to have. The breaking point came when I got laid off from my main job during a company merger. It wasn't my fault. The entire department was cut. But when I walked through the door with a box of my things, Vanessa didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't hug me. She looked at the box, then looked at me and said, "Are you serious? How am I supposed to explain this to my mother?" That was the moment the fog started to lift. I realized I wasn't a partner to her. I was an ATM. A useless husband in her eyes wasn't a man who didn't help around the house or who didn't love his wife. A useless husband was simply a man who couldn't bring in a paycheck. I spent the next 3 months looking for work while collecting unemployment. I was applying for jobs every single day, but the market was tough. During those 3 months, Vanessa's behavior went from cold to cruel. She started sleeping in the guest room. She stopped cooking for me altogether. She would make dinner for herself and eat it in front of the TV while I made myself a sandwich. I tried to talk to her, to tell her that this was temporary, that I was trying. She would just roll her eyes and walk away. One night, I overheard her on the phone with her sister. She was laughing. She said, "I don't even know why I married him. He's useless. I'm just waiting for him to get a job so I can take half of it and leave." I felt my blood run cold. That was the confirmation I needed. She wasn't going to stick with me through the hard times. She was just waiting for the hard times to end so she could cash out. So I made a decision. I stopped trying to fix the marriage. I started focusing on protecting myself. I finally landed a job, but it was a significant pay cut from what I was making before. When I told Vanessa, she didn't congratulate me. She said, "That's it? That's the best you could do?" A week later, I came home to find divorce papers on the kitchen counter. She didn't even have the decency to say it to my face. She was already gone, staying with her sister, and the papers were waiting for me with a sticky note that said, "Sign it, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Now, before we get into what happened in that courtroom, if you're the kind of person who believes that people eventually get what they deserve, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. Karma After Midnight keep bringing these stories to you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor and tap that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. So I'm holding these divorce papers, and I'm devastated, but I'm also angry. I'm angry that I wasted years of my life trying to please someone who saw me as a transaction. I hired a lawyer. His name was Mr. Donovan, and he was one of those older attorneys who doesn't smile much. I told him everything. I told him about the isolation, the emotional abuse, the fact that she was waiting to leave until I got a job. I listened quietly, and then he asked me a question I didn't expect. He asked, "Did you ever feel unsafe in your own home?" I told him I felt like I was walking on eggshells every single day. He nodded and said, "We're gonna play this smart." Vanessa, on the other hand, hired a pit bull of a lawyer. She was going for the jugular. She wanted half of everything. She wanted alimony. She wanted me to pay for her lawyer fees. She claimed that she had supported me during my unemployment and that she was entitled to be compensated for the emotional toll my job loss had taken on her. My lawyer, Mr. Donovan, looked at her demands and just chuckled. He said, "She's greedy. Greedy people make mistakes." We went through months of mediation and nothing worked. She refused to budge. She wanted a trial. She wanted to stand in front of a judge and humiliate me. And honestly, I think she believed that she would win. She thought her charm would work on the judge the way it used to work on me. She thought that because I was the man, the court would automatically side with her. But she forgot one thing. She forgot that the person I was during the marriage wasn't the person I was now. I had documented everything. Every text message where she called me names, every email where she demanded money, every credit card statement showing her spending thousands on clothes and trips while I was worried about paying the mortgage. The day of the trial arrived. It was a cold Tuesday morning. I put on my best suit, the one I bought for my mother's funeral, because I wanted to feel like I was honoring myself. I walked into that courtroom, and there she was. Vanessa looked perfect. Her hair was done, her makeup was flawless, and she was wearing a white dress that made her look like the victim. Her lawyer was whispering in her ear, and she had this smug look on her face like she had already won. I sat down at the table with Mr. Donovan, and I tried to keep my hands from shaking. The judge called the case, and her lawyer stood up first. He painted a picture of me as a deadbeat. He said that I had failed to provide for my wife, that I had been emotionally distant, and that I was a useless husband who had drained her youth and her potential. Then it was Vanessa's turn to take the stand. She looked at the judge with tears in her eyes, and she started her testimony. She talked about how hard she worked around the house, how she tried to be supportive, and how I just couldn't keep a job. She was good, I'll give her that. She had the entire room believing that she was the victim. And then my lawyer stood up for cross-examination. He walked over to her, very calm, and he asked her, "Mrs. Cole, you described your husband as useless. Can you tell the court what made him useless?" Vanessa looked at me with pure contempt. She didn't hesitate. She looked right at the judge and said, "He couldn't provide, he couldn't take care of me, he was a useless husband, he couldn't even keep a roof over our heads without me pushing him." She said it with such venom that you could feel the temperature in the room drop. My lawyer nodded slowly. He walked back to our table and picked up a stack of papers. He said, "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A through F." He handed them to the judge. He said, "These are bank statements, credit card reports, and text message logs from the last 4 years." He turned back to Vanessa and said, "Mrs. Cole, is it true that during the period your husband was unemployed for 3 months, you continued to spend an average of $2,000 a month on clothing and spa treatments?" Her face went pale. She stammered, "I needed to maintain my appearance for networking." My lawyer didn't flinch. He said,
Is it also true that while your husband was applying for jobs, you went on a trip to Miami with your sister, charging $3,000 to a joint credit card that your husband was solely responsible for paying? She started to sweat. She looked at her lawyer, but he was just staring at the floor. She said, "That was a business trip." My lawyer held up her Instagram photos, printed out, showing her on a yacht with the caption, "Living my best life." He asked, "Was the yacht a business expense too?" The judge was looking at Vanessa with a hard stare. My lawyer continued, "Mrs. Cole, you called your husband useless, but isn't it true that he paid the mortgage for 6 years straight while you quit 3 different jobs because you didn't like your bosses? Isn't it true that he was the one who woke up at 4 in the morning to work while you slept in until noon? And isn't it true that the only reason he lost his job was due to a company merger that had nothing to do with his performance?" She didn't answer. She just sat there, her facade crumbling. Then came the moment I'll never forget. My lawyer introduced the recording. In my state, it's legal to record a conversation if one party consents, and I had recorded a conversation we had about 6 months before she left. In the recording, Vanessa was screaming at me because I hadn't bought her the new iPhone. She said, and I quote, "You're pathetic. You're a useless husband. The only reason I stay is because I'm waiting for you to get your bonus so I can take it and finally leave you. I'm entitled to half of everything you have for putting up with you." Her voice echoed through the silent courtroom. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled it because the recording was legally obtained. The judge took off his glasses and looked at Vanessa. He said, "Mrs. Cole, you are asking this court to award you alimony and a significant portion of the marital assets, but based on the evidence presented, it seems you have been financially and emotionally draining your husband for years while contributing very little. Calling him a useless husband on the stand after he paid for your lifestyle is not just a lie, it is an abuse of the legal system." The judge didn't even let her lawyer give a closing argument. He ruled from the bench. He dismissed Vanessa's request for alimony entirely. He ordered that the marital home, which was in my name before the marriage, was to remain mine. He said that due to her conduct, the wasteful spending, and the evidence of her intent to defraud, she was entitled to a negligible portion of the savings, and that portion was just enough to cover what she had spent on that Miami trip. He looked at her and said, "This court does not reward greed. This court does not reward cruelty. Case dismissed." I sat there in shock. I had been so afraid of losing everything, and instead I lost nothing. I kept my house, I kept my car, I kept my future. Vanessa, on the other hand, walked out of that courtroom with nothing but the clothes on her back and a legal bill she couldn't pay. She tried to appeal, but her lawyer dropped her because she couldn't afford the retainer. Last I heard, she moved back with her mother. She's been trying to find a wealthy husband for the last 2 years, but word gets around in our city. People know what she did. They know she sat in a courtroom, called a hard-working man useless, and tried to steal everything she had. She's become a cautionary tale. Now, you might be wondering what happened to me. After the divorce, something shifted. I realized I had spent so many years trying to be what Vanessa wanted, I had forgotten who I was. I took that anger, that hurt, and I channeled it into my career. I ended up getting a promotion 6 months later. I started investing in real estate on the side. I rebuilt my relationships with my friends and my mom, and I started this channel, Karma After Midnight, because I realized there are so many people out there going through the same thing. People who have been made to feel like they aren't enough, who have been gaslit into believing they're worthless. But here's the truth I want you to take from my story. When someone calls you useless, it rarely has anything to do with you. It's usually a reflection of their own greed, their own emptiness, and their own inability to appreciate what they have. I was never useless. I was just giving my energy to someone who didn't deserve it. And the moment I stopped letting her define my worth, my entire life turned around. Karma didn't strike her with lightning. It was slower than that. It let her dig her own grave, and then it made her lie in it in front of a judge. If you've ever been made to feel like you aren't enough, let this be your reminder that your value isn't determined by someone who refuses to see it. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor and share it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be going through a rough time in a relationship or a divorce. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Have you ever had a moment where the universe gave you exactly what you deserved? I read every comment and I want to hear from you. And if you want to see more stories about justice, revenge, and the beautiful timing of karma, make sure you're subscribed to Karma After Midnight. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you are not useless. You are just in the wrong room. And when you find the right room, you'll realize you were priceless all along. I'll see you in the next one.